Okay, heroes. Today, I want to take a look at the articles that you read in the text set. Are mobile devices helpful or harmful? As you can see, all of the articles in here were trying to convince us or persuade us that either smartphones were helpful or they were hurtful to us. And so I want to take a look at a couple of these articles, and we want to try to evaluate if their claim was true or if there was any bias or stereotype or irrelevant information that got in the way of their argument and could possibly have affected their validity. All right, so we're going to look at this very first one together, and we're going to see what we find here. So we're looking at connections aren't conversations. While technology enables, it can also interfere. So, a prisoner in the US was recently released after 44 years of incarceration for the attempted murder of a police officer. Emerging onto the streets of New York City, Otis Johnson, now 69, found himself bewildered by the world before him. Seeing people apparently talking to themselves on the street, futuristic headphones dangling from their ears, reminded him of CIA agents. People barely paid attention to their surroundings and instead studied their smartphones while crossing the street, engrossed in their own personal bubble. So notice this section right here. We've got some stereotyping going on here. And notice these negative comments. People barely paid attention and were engrossed in their own bubbles. And so we can see right off the bat that our author here is very much not in favor of how prevalent smartphones have become. We see this stereotyping, this generalization of their claim. Let's continue. Technology had delivered Johnson a massive culture shock. The shock of a world where technology has quickly changed the way we live and the way we relate to one another. In 2013, Sherry Turkle, a clinical psychologist and esteemed professor at the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology, wrote Alone Together, in which she questioned the extent to which social media is bringing people together. Following decades of research on the profound impact of modern technology on human relationships, Turkle concluded that because technology is everywhere, we're moving from conversation to connection. And so this right here, I'm going to make a note because here is a source. So we have an expert who wrote a book about social media and how it is actually moving us from conversation to connection. So here's a source. Let's keep going. Connection, it seems, suggests a very different quality of social interaction in comparison to conversation. Connection refers to a continuous streams of little tidbits of information, such as those neatly packaged into 140 characters on Twitter. Conversation, on the other hand, refers to listening and empathetic understanding, actively attending to the other person rather than quickly commenting on their status updates while online while simultaneously talking on the phone, doing the laundry, or preparing the children's dinner. Now, my question here is this information relevant? Is it actually contributing to this article? I haven't seen anything yet that kind of convinces me that it is, but let's keep going and see if we find any. So this couldn't be further from meaningful conversations and real intimate relationships. So here we're finding out we have actually a reason. So here is some of our author's reasoning as to why smartphones are not providing the connection that we think they are. So here's some of their reasoning. The emergence of this new superficial dating culture poses new challenges in how we relate to one another and the criteria we use for mate selection. Research in this area is virtually non-existent, and it remains to be seen what sort of effects this has on forming and sustaining relationships. The internet increases our levels of connection, but may decrease our ability to have actual, deep, and meaningful conversations with each other. This phenomenon is called the Internet Paradox by Robert Kraut and colleagues in their 1988 paper. The Internet Paradox describes how it is natural to think that increased connectivity would improve a participation in community life and social relationships, but it actually reduces social involvement and increases loneliness. Are we, in fact, alone together when using social media? So notice here we have another source, but I'm having some thoughts about this. So I'm going to make a note here. Here's a source, but I'm wondering, this is from 1988. Is this reliable in 2020? So here's a source, but is it a reliable source? Can we depend on this information, this many years along? Is it a reliable source? My own research examines the possible negative consequences of internet use. I have explored how psychotherapists from around the world treat individuals who arrive at their practice with the problem of internet addiction. One of the 20 therapists I interviewed told me, my clients actually believe people want more from them than they actually do. They certainly fear the sort of relentlessness of ongoing messaging, but concurrent with that is an absolute terror of exclusion. Of course, exclusion is being left out. This interviewee alluded to what is now known as the fear of missing out, or FOMO in text lingo, the pervasive apprehension that others might be having rewarding experiences from which one is absent. FOMO is the pressure to be connected at all times and present in social media environments, switched on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So here we have some more information, and notice this is a very nice summary of how this connects. Let's continue. FOMO may lead to the compulsive use of social media, which may turn into an addiction. Research on social media addiction is relatively scarce in comparison to that covering gaming addiction. However, in a 2011 paper, I outlined the usage patterns, motivations, user personalities, and negative consequences of use and potential addiction. In my research, I've shown that social networks are primarily used for social engagement, particularly to maintain real-life relationships. Different people use social networks in different ways. For instance, extroverts use them for social enhancement. On the other hand, introverts use them for social compensation. This suggests that social network use can have distinct relationship benefits for users. So in looking at these two paragraphs, notice here we have a lot of use of that word may. And so we note that this is an expert summary. So this is our author's summary of the information. We already know that this is our author. We've seen them at the beginning of the article. And so this is an expert summary. And here, we kind of notice this here as well. We're looking again at a lot of generalization here. That generalization and stereotyping, where we boiled people down into only two categories, although you know that people are far more nuanced and complex than that. On the downside, I found that using social networks may lead to less participation in real-life relationships, as well as lower academic achievement and relationship problems. All of these may be indicators of pathological use. This may suggest that moderate use of social media may indeed be advantageous. However, excessive use may lead to problems associated with addiction. So again, notice all that use of the word may here. So we have another expert summary. So where does this leave us? How about we put on our researcher hats and try a little self-experiment over the holidays? Let's try and leave our smartphones, tablets, laptops, and smartwatches in the drawer, if only just to spend a few festive hours attending to our family and loved ones. How about we try and resist the urge to live tweet Uncle Dave's witty remarks and keep our followers up to date with pictures of our dogs in their Christmas outfits? Who knows? We might end up having a conversation without technology coming between us. And so here, notice here, we have our author's final message, their final statement. And so now I'm having some final thoughts about this article, and I'm actually probably going to go in and add to this note. And so I'm noticing in this article that we have lots of sources. So we have expert summaries, and studies are mentioned, and essays, papers, all this stuff is mentioned as far as our sources go in this article. But we also are finding that we don't have that much evidence to go on. And so as far as evidence goes, the problem is we're lacking we lack specific studies, we lack statistics. No. No, we're lacking specific research. Okay. And so, but we are getting some stereotyping and some irrelevant information in this article. And so the question I'm asking myself is this article valid? Now, even if I agree with this article, and that doesn't necessarily make it valid. So if we have sources and we have our reasoning, we can also put up here that we see several reasons in here that the author gives. They've given us sources, they mentioned some experts, and they've given expert summaries and mentioned some studies and essays and papers. But as far as the actual evidence goes, we're lacking in specifics. We don't have specific studies or statistics or even facts as our evidence, but we do have we have some stereotyping, some bias, and some irrelevant information. So looking at the ideas, is this article valid? Based on our definition, this article is not extremely valid. While the author may have proved they have their claim and their reasons, we're lacking in that specific evidence that would prove validity, aren't we? So what we've done this together, kind of looking at it and trying to figure out where our validity stands. And so what you are going to do now is you've read this article together. You're going to go all the way to the end to Article 4. So all the way down. So there's 2. Here's 3. You're going to come all the way down to Article 4. Banning smartphones for kids is just another technology-fearing moral panic. You're going to come down to this article, and you're going to go through, and you're going to read through this article and try and parse it out similarly to what we just did. And then you're going to come all the way down. When you're done, you're going to come all the way down to this very last question down here and note which of the 2 articles, the very first one that we read and this one, which one is more valid. Okay? So we've worked on this. We're practicing this skill. We just worked on the first one together. So now you get to work on number 4. Good luck, heroes. I know you can do it.